All right, Jabosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Hopefully everyone had a beautiful and uplifting Shabbos. A great zechus, Baruch Hashem, to be able to begin another week of Maseches Gittin together. Begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Sivan, Paul and Kathy Pollack, for dedicating all the Shloshim and Drushos this month as a zechus refuah sheleimah of Kathy's sister, Donna Baker-Matson. We hope that she has a complete and enduring refuah. To thank our week of learning sponsor, Binyomin Fleischman, in memory of his father, Rabbi Shmuel Yudel ben Binyomin Yaakov, Zichron Livracha, and to thank our Daf Yomi sponsor, Chaim Rothschild, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Bill Eskin, Yואל Yisrael ben Mordechai, as well as Ira Miriam Grossman in honor of their 51st wedding anniversary. We hope that in the merit, and I think Ira's on here. Yeah, Ira's online with us, Baruch Hashem, on Zoom from Yerushalayim. We hope that in Meretz Hashem, in the zechus of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshamos will have an aliyah. The families in Nechama and the Grossmans in Meretz Hashem will be zocheh to continue to build by Yisrael and Yisrael Mea ve'esrim shanim tovos. Jose, with that, let us begin. Today's daf. I did not. You could just tell it to me. Just tell it to me. Oh, and by Greg and Rachel Levitan in honor of the birth of their granddaughter on Shabbos Baruch Hashem to their children Uri and Adina Rabinowitz. Mazel tov, mazel tov, shvizoch legal Torah ulechupah ulemaisim tovim. Mazel tov. I will say with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Lamed Gimel. We are picking up on the bottom of Lamed Beis and the Beis 32b attitude das. Barishona haya osa. So we'll say, remember again in the Mishnah in yesterday's daf highlighted the concept, fascinating idea, namely that the Mishnah was talking about the ability to be mevatel shlichus. Right, Reuven is divorcing his wife Rachel. He dispatches the get with a shaliach, and ultimately, again, then he has a change of heart. So the Mishnah told us about all the different ways in which a person could go ahead and be mevatel the shlichus. So Reuven could run after the shliach. Reuven could go ahead and send the shliach after the shliach. Reuven could run to Rachel. Right, all different ways. The ikar is he could be mevatel the shlichus as long as what? As long as what? The get has not yet reached Rachel. So as long as the get hasn't reached Rachel, Reuven has the ability to be mevatel. The Mishnah then said Barishona in the beginning, so what would happen? A man who wanted to be mevatel a get, what would he do? He would convene a beis din. Right, wherever he was to convene a beis din, he'd be mevatel a get in front of three people, and the get was batal. Only one problem, right? Minor problem is his wife might not know about it. Right, and she still receives the get. The shliach doesn't know, the wife doesn't know, so they're going about their business thinking that she's divorced. Therefore, Rabbi Gamliel was metakin. Rabbi Gamliel Azakin instituted ultimately again that you can't be mevatel a get not in the presence of the shaliach and the wife. Good. So as by that, let us begin. Barishona haya ose itmar b'fnei kamahu mevatlo. So the Gemara says as follows. Now, before the takana of Rabbi Gamliel, where a husband had the ability to be mevatel the get. Right, wherever he was, how many people would he need to convene in order to be mevatel again? I will say, again, as was brought up in yesterday, I'm using the lashon of being mevatel the get, but the truth is it's not really an accurate lashon. Really what you're doing is what? What are you really doing? You're being mevatel the shlichos, you're shutting down. Remember, we spoke about in yesterday's daf, yesterday's shir, that there's really two parts of the get process. There's the actual creation of the document itself, in accordance with all of its strictures and details, and then there's the delivery, right? Because the document by itself is irrelevant until it's delivered to the woman. So when we're speaking about bittul over here, we're really speaking about shutting down the process of delivery. Because remember, in order to be mevatel a get itself, what do you have to do? What would you need? Right. Well, you need some type of disqualification in the shtar itself. Correct. So therefore, we're talking about over here. So even though we're using lashon being mevatel the get, in reality, what you're really doing is shutting down the delivery mechanism. Okay, so we'll say, so before Rabbi Gamliel instituted that you're not allowed to do this, how many people do you need to convene in order to shut down the delivery mechanism? So Rav Nachman b'fnei beis, Rav Nachman says two people. Rav Sheshes b'fnei gimel. Rav Sheshes says shivyon. I just want to point out again, just to hold cup on this. Remember, the discussion is a little bit irrelevant, because Rabbi Gamliel already said you can't do this. The Gemara is just asking more out of curiosity. I know I can't do it, but before Rabbi Gamliel legislated that you can't do it, how would you do it? So Rav Nachman says you convene a group of two people and a mevatel the get in front of the two people. Rav Sheshes b'fnei gimel. The Sheshes says no, you need three. So Rav Sheshes b'fnei gimel. So also Rav Sheshes says you need three. Why? Beis Din Katani. All right, that's pretty straightforward, because ultimately, again, it says that the husband could be mevatel the get in the presence of a Beis Din. A Beis Din is 3. Rav Nachman Rafnei Beis. Rav Nachman says in front of 2. Why? Lebei Trei Nami Beis Din Karilahu. What says as we're going to see that halacha l'maisa, sometimes 2 people are also called a Beis Din. So where do we get this? From where do I know that sometimes 2 people are even called a Beis Din? Tisnan Mosrani Lifnechem, top of Lamed Gimel, Ploni u Ploni Adayanin, Sheba Makom Ploni. So I will say this is actually fascinating. We're going to actually see this sugi in just a couple of days from now, right? Which is the following. We'll say the sugi of Pruzbal. Pruzbal is, remember, Shemitah comes. What does Shemitah do to debts? Shemitah wipes out debts. We're going to say it's actually it's actually this week. It's this week. Rashi goes to Lamed Vav. So a couple of days. Right, we're going to see it this week. We'll say, hey, so we ran into a problem. What was the problem? When Shemitah was approaching, people were reticent to lend money. But remember, again, in general, so Jewish lending is not a lucrative process, because already you can't lend with interest. So, okay, at least I'm going to get back principle. Shemitah was coming, and people were reluctant to lend. It's understandable. So we'll see this also. But Hillel created this concept of a pruzbal. We'll even discuss what that word means. But essentially, what happens with a pruzbal is an individual gives over his debts to Beis Din. Because Shemitah only cancels personally held debt, does not cancel Beis Din held debt. So Pruzbal is the mechanism through which I hand over my individual loans to a Beis Din, thereby allowing them to be collectible even after the Shemitah year. Okay? So we'll say, so what's the text of the Pruzbal? Mosrani lifneichem, I'm the lender. I hand over to you, top of Lamed Gimel, Ploni u Ploni Adayan, so and so and so and so, my judges, Shebamakom Ploni, you are in so and so place. And again, that's the Lashon through which I hand over the debt. Now, both say, what do you see from here? You see from here that there are 2 people, and yet they're called judges. So from here, Rav Nachman says, you see from here that halacha l'maisa, 2 people could also be called the Beis Din. Rav Sheshes says, Atu Tana ki ruchla lichashev alezel. So little Rav Sheshes says, do you think that the Tana, the Mishnah is like a spice salesman, that he has to write every single thing? So apparently, spice sales persons. Oh, very good. Excellent. Right. Don't want to attach any pronouns, right? So spice salespersons, right? So apparently when they would go ahead and sell their wares, they would put everything out. They had put everything out. So this expression of being a spice salesperson is you say everything. So Rav Sheshes says, the Tana of the Mishnah is not a spice sale, so they have to spell everything out. Rav Sheshes said, it's very possible that Pruzbal requires 3. But the Tana doesn't have to write, Mosrani lifneichem, Ploni, u Ploni, u Ploni. In other words, just say Ploni and Ploni, and we get that it doesn't actually mean 2, but rather it means 3. So Rav says, it's interesting. So Rav Nachman is seeing the statement of the Mishnah by Pruzbal as being an explicit statement. No, 2. So you see from here that 2 are dayanin. Rav Sheshes says no. It's just being written shorthand. Everyone knows that a Beis Din is always 3, 2 is not a Beis Din. Okay, Rav Nachman, so now Milu. So Rav Nachman says, fine, I'll bring you another source that 2 could count as 0. So remember again, just go back for a second. We're speaking about before the Takan of Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken, a husband dispatched to get with the Shaliach, he has a change of heart, either he can't or he doesn't feel like running out to the Shaliach or running to his wife. So what does he do? He convenes a Beis Din, a group, and he's mevatel the get. Shaila now is, in that pre-Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken time, how many people did you need to shut down the process of get? So again, Rav Nachman 2, Rav Sheshes 3. Rav Sheshes is self-explanatory because it's a Beis Din. Rav Nachman is really the one who needs to explain why 2 would be enough. So another approach. Rav Nachman, I'll give you a second approach. Disnan, hadayonin chosmin lamata, o ha'edin. Shabbos said this is still the same Pruzbal case. The judges could sign on the bottom of the Pruzbal, or you could bring in separate witnesses. My lav dayan dum yededim. Rav Nachman will say, what do you see from here? That the judges are like the witnesses. Ma'idim shnayim, just like there are 2 witnesses. Af dayanim nami shnayim. So too there are 2 judges. So Rav Nachman says, what do you see from here? That ultimately, again, a Beis Din could even be comprised of 2 judges based on Pruzbal. But Rav Sheshes says, no. Mide irya, hakidisa v'hakidisa. No, it's 2 different things. There are Edim, and ultimately there are Dayanim. So Lamali Lemisne Dayanim, Lamali Lemisne Edim. So why does the Mishnah have to go ahead and write both Dayanim and Edim? Watch this. Hakamash Malon, Deloshna Kasav Balashon Dayanim, Bechasmi Edim, Veloshna Kasav Balashon Edim, Bechasmi Dayanim. So we'll say ultimately, the Gemara says it doesn't make a difference whether you wrote the formal prosbol as a lashon of Edim or a lashon of Dayanim. And it doesn't matter when you sign, if you sign it as Edim or if you sign it as Dayanim. That's the chiddush over here. Then there's a little bit of document fluidity in terms of how you actually word it, wording it as witnessing or wording it as judges. Okay, so I will say, so that's the machlokes Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Before the Takon Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken, how many people do you need to be mevatel the get? Again, Rav Nachman 2, proving his point from Prusbol, Rav Sheshes 3, because it's called the Beis Din, and again, by default, Beis Din is always 3. Good, let's go weiter. Mibnei Tikkun Olam. So we'll say, so remember again now, what happens? Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken steps in. And what's Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken? He says, Mibnei Tikkun Olam, for the benefit of society, a husband cannot be mevatel the get, not in the presence of the woman or the shaliach. Right? Why? For the benefit of society. What's the benefit of society? So what Rabbi Yochanan says, in order to avoid mamzerim. Now we'll say this is a bit more obvious, because what are we concerned about? Again, we'll talk about this more in just a moment. What are we concerned about? We're concerned that husband's going to be mevatel the get. She's not going to know about it, right? And in good faith, she thinks that she's divorced. She's going to go ahead and get remarried, right? Have children. It turns out that she's never divorced. It's adultery. The kids are mamzerim. Again, not intentional. I always say, but sometimes in life you can do things unintentionally, but it doesn't change the consequences of your actions. Reish Lakish says, Mipnei takanas agunos. Reish Lakish says, no, it's about takanas agunos. So what does this mean? Rabbi Yochanan mipnei takanas mamzerim. What I was saying, I think I was going to explain each of these positions. What is takanas mamzerim? Several akirav nachman dor mipnei shnayim. So watch this. So Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rav Nachman. Right? Remember, what Rav Nachman say? That when you mevatel the get, you only have to do it in front of two people. What's the problem? Ubei trey les lehukala. Two people who essentially act as a testimonial unit, don't produce a call. Because they don't produce a call, therefore what? Vihi lo shama. She's not going to hear that he was mevatel the get. V'lo yada. Therefore she doesn't know. Va'azla uminsava. We'll say it's actually interesting, right? Hilo shama v'lo yada. Right? We'll say it's a shtick repetitive. No, she didn't hear, and therefore she doesn't know. I will say it's an interesting yesod in life that you don't know what you don't know. Right? Sometimes in life, and such you see this all the time, like in the realm of interpersonal conflict. I get upset at someone because I assume that they know something. Or you understand, right? In relationships, you see this all the time. How sometimes, like in the realm of shalom bias, one spouse expects the other spouse to know what they feel or what they're thinking or what they need. And when the other spouse, I'm trying very hard to avoid assigning husband and wife to these things, right? But so sometimes again, a spouse feels like, if you love me, you should know what I need, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, all these things. The other spouse is, I love you very much, right? But the spirit of prophecy was lost thousands of years ago. So I have absolutely no way of knowing what you're thinking or what you need, but I'll make you a deal. If you tell me, if you communicate to me, I'm happy to be there for what... I feel so much better, by the way. I'm happy to go ahead and do that for you. We'll say, I can't tell you how many times this happens. And again, and there's hurt, but the hurt, it's just tell me, and I'm happy to do it. I will say, in relationships, in life in general, you can't expect people to know what it is that you want or what you need without communicating it to them. I will say, the only time in life where you can expect someone to know what you want or what you need is like in infancy. And even then, I will say, right, it's the most incredible thing. I have like a front row seat to this now with my Baruch Hashem, brand new grandson, and it's the sweetest thing. Like the baby starts to cry, and what happens? Like mobilization. What is it? Is it hungry? Right? Is it diaper? Is it this? And of course, You have no idea. So you try this, you try that. Again, it's always, the good news is it's a very small number of options, right? Right? But Lamaisa, in infancy, because you can't communicate, everyone just tries to guess. A lot of times in adulthood, we still remain in emotional infancy or in communicative infancy. So we don't communicate what we need or what we want, just expecting someone else to understand it. Shabbos said, what does the Gemara say? It's incredible. Vihilo shama, she didn't hear that he was mevatel the get, and therefore what? Below yada. She doesn't know. She doesn't know. Say, by the way, this is the beauty of Gemara. That's why we spend so much time on Gemara, because everything is in here. Everything is in here. Hafakba v'hafakba dekulaba. It's all in here. I will say relationships 101. Be communicative to the people you are in a relationship with. Tell them what you need. Tell them how you need it. Tell them what you want. And especially in a loving relationship, that other person is going to give it to you. But lamaisa, don't make them guess, or don't assume they know what's in your heart or in your mind. Find the koach to communicate. Find the koach to communicate. So what happens? And ultimately then she has no idea. She She goes ahead and gets married. Reish Lakish says, no, what we're concerned about, the Moshe is in a guna situation. What's the guna situation? Savala Krev Sheshes the Amar Bifnei Gimel. So remember again, Reish Lakish himself ultimately again holds like Rav Sheshes, right? And Rav Sheshes says that Allah Lamaisa, originally, before the Takana, if you're Mavatal get, it's done in front of 3. Ubeit Lasa Islu Kala. And we're going to say, so 3 people have a call. Rabbi, remember again, there's a piece here that's very important, which is that a woman doesn't get remarried instantaneously, right? With back part of Yavamis days. What's the halacha after she gets divorced? 3 months. So there is a little bit of time, right? So in other words, there's a little bit of time for a call to get out. The problem is, according to Reish Lakish, ultimately he subscribes to the view of Rav Sheshes, which means that if you're mevatel get, you have to do it in the presence of 3 people. 3 people are a beis din. A beis din ultimately has a call, generates publicity about the fact that the get was batal, right? V'shama v'yada. Ultimately, she'll know that the get was batal. She won't get remarried. However, v'takanas takunas udiika. So we'll say, so what is Reish Lakish concerned about? Reish Lakish is concerned about that a husband can play games with his wife and ultimately, again, keep her locked in the marriage. So it's a takanas agunos. So in order for a woman not to remain in aguna, that a husband could just summarily just be mavatal the get, Rabbi Gamliel Institute said no. You can't be mavatal the get not in her presence. Incredible. So turn out on it. Let's analyze a little bit. So therefore now we have like the timeline of this takana. So originally, when a husband went ahead and dispatched the get with a shaliach, if he had a change of heart, all he needed to do was what? Gather a group, be mavatal the get in their presence. How large does the group have to be? Machlokes. Rav Nachman 2 people, Rav Sheshes 3 people. Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin comes along and says, no, we're shutting down the presence. Can't do that anymore. Why? Lipnei tikkun ha'olam. What's the tikkun ha'olam over here? Either A, to prevent mamzerus, because she's not going to know that the get was batal, and she's going to get remarried, have mamzerim, or takanas agunos. That we're concerned that if it's too easy for the husband to just be mavatal the get, he's going to do that just to keep her locked in the marriage. So that's our timeline. Okay, so we'll say, so now we're operating in the post Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin period, where you can't be mavatal the get, not in the presence of the woman or the shliach. So now watch this. Tanabana, get ready for this. Bitlo. What happens if he did it? So I'll say, so now let me listen to this case. Remember, we're now operating in the post Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin era. So his takana is on the books. So watch this. So Reuven is married to Rachel. Reuven decides to divorce Rachel. He sends a get with a shaliach. And then what happens? Reuven decides, change of heart. Reuven gathers 3 people. Let's just keep it simple. Reuven gathers 3 people, and he's mevatel the get. So we'll say, what's the shaila? Does it work? So remember again, he wasn't supposed to do it because Rabbi Gamliel said you're not allowed to do that anymore. But he did it. So he convened the beis din not in the presence of the woman or not in the presence of the shaliach. He did it. Does it work? So the Gemara says, bitlo, mevotel. It works. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel Silber says, no way. Eino yochalo levatlo. You can't do that. You cannot do that. After Rabbi Gamliel went ahead and said you can't do it, it doesn't work. For the hosif al tano, and furthermore, again, if you attached a tanai in a get, you can't add on, you can't add on to the tanai after the get has already been dispatched. Why? Shimkein ma koach beis din yafa. So Rabbi say this is incredible. This phrase, ma koach beis din yafa, Rabbi means what good, right? What power does beis din have if at the end of the day they could legislate laws and then you could ignore it? So Rabbi say, see here what's going on. This is so dramatic, so dramatic. So again, Ruvain went against the Takar Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin. And after the get was dispatched, right, he convenes a separate beis din and says, I'm hereby mevatel the get. So does it work? So Rebbe says, yeah, it's bad. I say, sometimes in life you can do that's something that's wrong, but it still works. Right? So Rebbe says, batla mevotel. Batla mevotel. I say, by the way, also knows words, batla mevotel. Batla mevotel. Such a powerful phrase. Batlo. Right? If ultimately, again, you become a batlon, right? If you waste time, if you're mevatel, so bitlo, mevotel, ultimately, again, that becomes your mahos. That becomes your entire essence, becoming a person, ultimately, again, who's a batlon. Anyway, so that's Rebbe. Rabbi Shmuel says, no way, it doesn't work. After Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin went ahead and legislated that you can't do this, if you tried it, it doesn't work. Because if you say it does work, then what power does beis din have? Right? What's the point of beis din's legislation if anyway you could do whatever you want? Incredible. So the Gemara says, Umi kamidi, timidaraisa batal gitum shum koach beis din yafa, sharinan eishisan. I'll say, so this is wild. So let's watch this. So Shimon says like this, Ruvain, you went ahead and you convened a group and you were mevatel the get. So Shimon says, it's not going to work because if it does work, Imkein ma koach beis din yafa. What good is the power of beis din? So Gemara says, hold up here, I will say. Let's take a step back. Midaraisa. When Ruvain gathers this beis din, and he's mevatel the get in the presence of the beis din. So we'll say, so midaraisa, does his bittul work? Yeah. The Rabbanan came along and said, it doesn't work. Ma koach beis din yafa. So Gemara says, let me get this straight. So you're going to take a get that is really batal, i.e. void, but in order to go ahead and maintain the integrity of beis din, we're going to say it's valid. And we're going to let her get remarried with that get that is biblically void in order to maintain the integrity of beis din. That doesn't make any sense. To which the Gemara says, yes, it does. This is incredible. The Gemara says, because I'll tell you why. Kol din mekadesh. Adaita d'Rabbanan mekadesh. I will say, this is wild. Anytime a person gets married, I will say, how does a person get married? Right? A man says to his wife, Hari'at mikudesh asli kidas Moshe v'Yisrael. Become married to me in accordance, right, with the laws of Moshe and Klal. So I will say, what does that mean? Marriage is an institution that is built on the consent of halacha, right? Of Chazal. And therefore, I will say, Chazal have an incredible power, which is V'atkinu Rabbanon Likidushin Minei. And I will say, in this case, you know what Chazal chose to do? Chazal chose to dissolve the Kiddushin. I will say, there's a lot of stuff packed in here, right? So essentially, what the Gemara is introducing us to is the concept that marriage itself is predicated on rabbinic consent. If the rabbis choose to withdraw their consent from a particular union, it retroactively dissolves the marriage. That is the power that Chazal had. So we'll say, so now watch this. This is the concept called Hafkaz Kiddushin. Hafkaz Kiddushin means, again, every marriage is built upon the consent of Chazal. If Chazal choose to withdraw that consent from the marriage, it can retroactively dissolve the marriage. So watch this. So let's play this out. So now, get ready. Reuven is divorcing Rachel. What does he do? He dispatches the get to the shaliach. He has a change of heart. What is he supposed to do? Right? How? Either go to Rachel or go to the shaliach. That's halacha, right? As long as and you could do that. That's fine. As long as the get didn't reach her, you're fine. What does Reuven decide to do? He convenes a beis din on his own and is mevatel the get against the takana of Rabbi Gamliel. So we'll say, Rabbi Shmuel Silber says it doesn't work, but we'll say, why doesn't it work? Not because his bittul is really effective, But because he went against the words of Chazal, essentially what Chazal do is they retroactively dissolve his marriage. So the divorce, so I'll say, what's interesting about this answer is, technically speaking, the get itself is actually still a valid get, right? Because at the end of the day, is not a valid get. But in order to get, because his bittul technically works on a d'oraisa level. So technically they're still married. But because he went ahead and went against the takanas Chazal penalized him essentially by dissolving his marriage. So I will say, so I just want to point out, it's not, according to what the Gemara is saying over here, it's not the get that dissolved his marriage. It's the fact that he went against the takan of Chazal. Chazal chose to retroactively dissolve his marriage. The concept of hafkaz kiddushin. I will say, this is a big topic, which the Gemara is kind of dangling over here just a little bit. We're going to get more into it. So watch this. So the Gemara says, one second. Amrli Ravina Ravashi. Tenach tekadish bekaspa. So also, I understand how you could retroactively invalidate a marriage when it was affected with money. Kaddish b'biyah ma'ikal meimar. What about say? What happens if he affected kiddushin with biyah? Remember again, kiddushin can be affected three different ways: kesef, shtar, and biyah. So we'll say, how do you unravel a biyah? To which the Gemara says, "Ma'ikal meimar shavi rabbanon bi'ilasa bi'ilas znos." Ultimately, again, Chazal said, okay, obviously, you can't undo the biyah, but I could recategorize it. Right? Chazal could recategorize it. And suddenly, again, it's not a bias kiddushin, but ultimately, again, it is a bias znos. So just want to point out the dramatic events that just unfolded over here over the course of this daf. So just understand what happened over here. We have our original takana, that you could convene a bezin and just move out to the get. Rabbi Gamliel, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. In fact, the only way to move out to the get is either in the presence of the woman or the presence of shaliach. But what happens if you did it? You convene the Beis Din and the woman doesn't know about it, the Shaliach doesn't know about it. What's the halacha? So Rebbe says, unfortunately it works. It's wrong, but it works. Rabbi Shmuel says, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So we'll say, so the Gemara doesn't understand, how can you tell me it doesn't work? It should work. Midarais, it works. Rabbi Shmuel says, you're right. Technically speaking, it does work. Therefore the get is void. But Chazal felt that it's so wrong for you to go ahead and go against this Takar Rabbi Gamliel Azakin, that what? They dissolved your marriage. So guess what? You're not married. But the reason, Reuben, you're not married to Rachel is not because the get was effective, because the get really technically was ineffective. Rather, the reason you're not married is Chazal retroactively dissolved your marriage from the beginning. Ultimately, again, made it as if you're never married as a penalty for going against the Takar Rabbi Gamliel. And I both say, we'll have to see how we pass on this, because it's big stuff. But I also will point out over here, when to apply Hafkaz Kiddushin, when to not apply Hafkaz Kiddushin is a big discussion. Also, so some want to always use this, right, as a way to resolve the Aguna issue. Right, here is the easiest way to resolve Aguna issue. A man is being unreasonable and holding out a get. Just dissolve the marriage. So I will say, so you understand, of course, that how to use this, when to use this, who has the power to use this? Because I will say, obviously, if used too often and used in inappropriate cases, it undermines the fundamental strength of the marital union. So again, we'll get more into it, but we just now introduce this concept. Good, let's go back there. Says in the Torah, Amar la Sarah, man says to 10 people, Kisvu get le ishti, write a get for my wife. Right, Rabbi say, he's saying to a group of 10, so what's the halacha? Yochel levatel zeh shelo b'fnei zeh divrei Rabbi. So Rabbi say, he has the ability to go to be mevatel one member of the group or one part of the group, not in the presence of the other. Rabbi say, now what's the chiddush over here? So remember again, what Rabbi's coming along and saying is, this does not abrogate the takana of Rabbi Gamliel. So remember again, Rabbi Gamliel essentially said, you can't be mevatel something not in the presence, that's not good English, right? You can't mevatel something not in the presence of the parties it impacts. That's essentially what Rabbi Gamliel is saying, right? So, Ruvain, you're sending a get to Rachel. If you want to be mevatel the get, which you can, as long as the get has not yet reached the woman, you can, but you have to do it in the presence of the parties who it impacts. Not all of them, but either the shaliach or the isha. Fine. So we'll say, Rabbi says over here in the case where a husband says to a group of 10, write a get for my wife, he is allowed to go ahead and be mevatel parts of the right, one part of the group, not a part of the other part of the group. We'll see why. Rabbi Shmuel says no. Rabbi Shmuel says no, not true. If you're going to be mevatel some part of the group, you have to be mevatel some in the presence of the whole. So, what are they arguing about? This is great. We'll say this is a makas sugya. So, we'll say, so what are they arguing about? What they're arguing about, we'll say, is when you have a testimonial unit, when you go ahead and you're mevatel some of them, is the entire group batal or not? Rebbe holds, Eidos shebatla miktsasa, lo batla kula. Rebbe says ultimately again, when you're mevatel part of an eidos, it doesn't automatically go ahead and mevatel the rest, and therefore the az lichanach kasi diyavi lichtibu v'leisfu. And then I will say it's fine if a guy says to a group of 10, people, go ahead and write a get for my wife. If he's mevatel some of them, I will say that's fine. The rest of them could still go ahead and write the get. Not a problem, write and deliver it. On the other hand, Rabbi Shmuel holds eidos shebat la mitzvah sabat la kula. He holds that I will say when you're mevatel part of an eidos. In fact, again, the entire eidos is batal. I will say now watch this. So that what that means is if you said to a group of 10 people, guys, write a get for my wife. Write a get for my wife. If you're mevatel 2 of them, then what I will say? Then what? The whole group is batal. Here's the problem: if you're being mevatel the 2, not in the presence of the remaining 8, what could happen? Right? What's going to happen? V'hanach lo yadi. So the 2 that you are mevatel know. The other 8 who were there have no idea what happened. They also don't realize that their shlichos is also batal. And what's going to happen? V'azli v'kasi v'yavi. They're going to end up writing and delivering the get. V'sharu eishes ishla'alma. And they end up allowing a married woman ultimately again to get remarried in a prohibited fashion. So also the Gemara wants to suggest that's the machlokus over here between Rabbi and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Do we say eidos shebat la mitzvah sabat la kul or not? When you negate part of a testimonial group, is the entire group batal or not? Rebbe says no. Therefore, again, if you were mevatel 2, even if the other 8 go ahead and write the get, that's totally fine. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no. When you're mevatel 2, the whole group becomes batal. What's the nafkamina? The nafkamina is if you're going to decommission 2 of them, does it have to be done in the presence of the other 8? According to Rebbe, no. According to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, yes. V'baisema. We'll say another interpretation of the machlok. Yes. V'baisema. T'kuli alma eidu shabat l'mitzasa lo bat l'kula. In reality, everyone agrees that when you're mevatel part of an eidos, ultimately, again, you're not mevatel the whole. Not mevatel the whole. So what's the machlokos over here? V'hacha hainu Rabbi Shimon Gamliel kasavar milsa demisabda bi'ape asara tzricha be'asara l'mishlafa. And I will say here, it's a different idea. Rabbi Shimon just holds over side that the way it works is as follows. Whenever you do something in the presence of a group, it must be undone in front of that group as well. It's just it's a din in group dynamics. If you did something in the presence of 10, it must be undone in the presence of 10. And therefore, again, if you want to decommission, right, in this version over here, in this version, everyone is agreeing that if you have a group and you go ahead and you're mevatel some of them, the rest of the group still remains intact. So why does Rabbi Shimon Gamliel say that you have to be mevatel the 2 in the presence of the other 8? It's just the din in group dynamics. Whatever you create in the presence of a group has to be decommissioned or batal, nullified in the presence of the group as well. So Ibailuhu. So that's a machlokas. Ibailuhu. Kulchem mahu. So we'll say now watch this. So in the case that we just said before, the lashon was Reuven walks over to a group of 10 people. And he says to the group of 10 people, Kisvu get li'ishti. Write a get for my wife. Okay, well, so that was first case. Case number 2 now is where he says, Kulchem kisvu get li'ishti. I want all of you. So he adds in that phrase, Kulchem, all of you. Now, we'll say, if you look at Rashi says, Kulchem chasomo, the kaim alam the eno get at shechtim ukulan. Now, we'll say, we're going to see this case later on in Mirat Hashem. We're going to see this case, on Samech Vav. Okay, now, a couple of weeks. We'll say that when a husband says to a group, Kulchem, what he's telling them essentially is he wants all of them to sign on the get. So in other words, if you can imagine, if Reuben goes over to a group of 10 people and he says, Kulchem kisvu get li'ishti, what he is effectively saying is, I want all of you to sign the get for my wife. Okay, so we'll say now watch this. So kulchem mau. So we'll say what happens now in the case of kulchem? Can he go ahead and be mevatel two of the people not in the presence of the other eight? So let's analyze. So time there. So do we say that the reason Rabbi Shmuel says you have to be mevatel in front of the entire group is because when you decommission some part of the group, the entire group becomes batel. V'ahani kevan damar kulchem lo matzi kasi v'yahivi. So we'll say, so again, if that's the case, it's not a concern over here. Why? Because since he said kulchem, anyway, so what has to happen? They all have to sign on the shtar, so they're not going to end up delivering the get to the wife without all 10 signatures. So it's going to come out ultimately again that he was mevatel too. Oh, Dilma, the other possibility is time of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Mishum Nekasavar Kol Milsa Demis Abda Be'ape Pe'asara. So you have Asara the Mishlafa. Maybe the other possibility is no. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel also, you know why you can't negate 2, not in the presence of the other 8, because anything done in the presence of 10 must be undone in the presence of 10. And therefore, Rabbi will say, even if Halach Lamaisi said Kulchem, if he wants to go ahead and nullify, be mevatel two of the group, he has to do it in the presence of the other 8. Okay, so I'll say, so you see how the answer to that question depends on which version of Rabbi Gamliel you subscribe to, Tashma. So let's go back to a little bit. Tashma. Amar l'shnayim, tinu get le'ishti. So we'll say, so we still have an answer. Let's answer the question. A man says, right, Reuven says to 2 people, give a get to my wife. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Yachal levantel zeh shelo b'fnei zeh divrei Rebbe. Rebbe holds that halacha l'maisa, he can go ahead and be mevatel one witness or one guy, not in the presence of the other. This is Rebbe. Rabbi Shmuel says, no. Eino yachal levantel ela zeh b'fnei zeh. Shmuel says, not true. You can only be mevatel one in the presence of the other. I v'hoshnayim dechi kulchem damu. Now both say shnayim, right, is like a case of kulchem. Why is it like a case of kulchem? We'll say, why is that? Because remember, you need at least 2 signatures on the get. Right? So bepashtos, when a man says the 2 guys, kisu get leishti, which we assume means write and sign, that's a case of kulchem. And what do you see over here? You see, even in the case of kulchem, Rabbi Shmuel demands that if you want to nullify one member of the group, it must be what? It must be done in the presence of the entire group. Upligi, Amar Rashi, no. Yes, if you were setting this up as a case where Reuben was saying to 2 witnesses, write and sign the get, I would agree with you. But that's not the case. What's the case? I will say Reuben is not asking the 2 guys to write the get. Rather, what is Reuben asking for? He's asking for the 2 individuals ultimately, again, to transport the get. So I would say that's when Rabbi Shmuel says, look at the end. I will say that if he appointed each of them on their own, he has the ability to go and be mevatel them, not in the presence of the other. If you set up the case as talking about witnesses, right, people who he's giving to transport the get, this makes sense. But if you're talking about the actual witnesses to write the get, I will say, so remembering this is actually very important. So remember, we're going to see now that in order for 2 witnesses to sign on a get, they have to be appointed at the same time. They have to be appointed together. So for example, if Reuben goes over to witness number 1 and says, write a get for me, and then goes over to witness number 2 and says, write a get for me, they don't combine. Right? They only combine to form a testimonial unit if appointed at the same time. Their testimony does not go ahead and combine, literally again until they witness the same event at once. So to which the Gemara says, well, maybe maybe he holds like Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha. So the Gemara says, so maybe he holds like Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha. Fine. So the Rashi says over here, by the way, I'll say in Rashi it's the 3rd of the wide lines in the bottom. What did Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha say? Rashi says, Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha, the polygalei of parak sheni diksubis ubisan hadra ba'amra afilu bazach hazeh. So I'll say, so apparently there is this position of Rabbi Shmuel ben Karcha who holds that halacha l'maisa, you can appoint 2 witnesses to write and to witness a document, even one not in the presence of the other. Fine. So Amar Shmuel bar Yehuda. So most of them listen to this. So Shmuel bar Yehuda says as follows: Shamas Mine, Rabbi Abba Tarti. I heard from Rabbi Abba two rulings. Chada ki Rebbe, the Chada Rokushim and Gamliel. So we'll say one was like Rebbe, and one was like Rokushim and Gamliel. So we'll say, here's I just want to point out. Let's pause here just a second. We have two cases, right? Case number one is Reuven says to 10 guys, Kisvu get leishti. Write a get for my wife. Okay? Now we'll say, now what does he want to do? What does he want to do? He wants to go ahead and be mevatel, decommission 2 members of that group. I'm using 2. It could be 1, it could be 3, it could be 4, it doesn't matter, right? So Rebbe said, he can decommission 2, not in the presence of the other 8. Rabbi Shmuel says, no. You have to do it in the presence of everyone. The presence of everyone. Now we'll say, so Rebbe's logic is because Rebbe holds, Eidos shebatla miktsasa, lo batla kula. When you negate part of a testimonial unit, the rest of the unit is still intact. Therefore, according to Rebbe, you could just be mavatal to wherever you are, and even if the other 8 continue to write the get, no problem. Rabbi Shmuel holds you have to be mavatal the 2 in the presence of the other 8. Why? Either because he holds eidos shabatla miktsasa batakula, or because he holds that when you create a group, the group must the same way you create a group in the presence of the group, you must decommission the group in the presence of the group. So that's machlokes 1. We'll say machlokes 2 was Amar l'shnayim tinu get leishti. You say to two people, give a get to my wife. So Rebbe once again says that Allah Chalamaisa, you could be mevatel one not in the presence of the other. Rabbi Shmuel says no, you cannot. Those are the 2 cases. So now watch this. So now says the Gemara as follows. What did I just leave off? So now watch this. Amar Shalbar Yehuda. Shams minad Rabbi Abba Tarti. I heard from Rabbi Abba 2 rulings. Chada ki Rebbe, v'chad Reb Shmuel. One was like Rebbe, and ultimately again one was like Reb Shimon Gamliel. Right? Those are 2. Right? One was like Rebbe, and one was like Reb Shimon Gamliel. Fine. I'm sorry. One more. There's one more machlokes. What's one more machlokes? Bitlo mevotel. Right? Bitlo. Okay, let's go back just a little bit. There are 3 machlokes in Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rebbe. Right? The first one was, remember, after the takana of Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken, let's say what happens. So let's chazara. What did Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken say? What did he say? You cannot convene a beis din. Right? How big is a beis din? Machlokes, Rab Nachman and Rav Sheshes, either 2 or 3. My point over here is you can't convene a beis din not in the presence of the shaliach or the isha to be mavatal the get. Fine, you can't do it. But now what happens? You did it. Does it work? So Rebbe says it works. Rabbi Shmuel says it doesn't work. Okay? So these are all the machloksim we have. Really, you could collapse machloksim 2 and 3 really into our machlokes. Right? We have bitlo mavotel and the ability to go ahead and be mevatel part of a group, not in the presence of the whole group. So now watch this. Okay, so now comes along. Rav Shlomo bar Yehuda. Sham said Rabbi Abba Tarti. I heard 2 things from Rabbi Abba. Chad Rebbe, the Chad Reb Shimon Gamliel. One ruling was like Rebbe, and one ruling was like Reb Shimon Gamliel. V'lo yedana hey Rebbe, v'hei Reb Shimon Gamliel. And I will say, I don't know which is which. In other words, I know that in one case, right, the halacha follows Rebbe, and in one case, the halacha follows Reb Shimon Gamliel, but I don't know which case is which. So I'm Rav Yosef. Nechzi anon. Let's analyze this ourselves. Let's analyze why. The Ri'asa Rav Dimi Amar. When Rav Dimi came along, he said as follows: Maisa va'asa Rebbe kedivrei chachamim. One time it happened that Rebbe conducted himself ultimately again like the words of the Chacham. Now what does this mean? Look at Rashi. Rashi says, Maisa va'asa Rebbe b'ksuvas kedivrei chachamim she'omrim shum hadayonim she'pichsu shtus o sir shtus mechrabatal. So we'll say, now listen to this. There's a concept of ona'ah. Ona'ah means that if you overcharge or undercharge by a 1/6, ultimately the transaction is void. So we'll say there's a very interesting machlokes. What happens if Beis Din sold property, and inadvertently they undersold it or oversold it by a sixth. So is the transaction of Beis Din batal? So Rabbi say this is a machlokes. This is machlokes, right? The Chachamim say, right? So one opinion says no, it's not batal. Why? Rabbi say, by the way, the overcharging or undercharging by a sixth, we call it an halacha. Oh no. So one opinion says no. Whatever Beis Din does stands, because if you begin to negate the transactions of Beis Din, then what? Ma koach Beis Din yafa. What power does Beis Din have? The Chachamim said no, it's batal. And I will say, interestingly enough, Rebbe himself went ahead and came around to the position of the Chachamim. Now I will say, now here's what's interesting. Let's go back for just a second. Why is this important for us? Well, let's actually finish up. He says, keep losing the place. Good. My son of Kirkidircham, I'm the fun of Rabbi. I'm the fun of Rabbi Parta, Ben Oshabi Allah, Ben Parta, Ben Oshabi Parata Gadol. Imkain, Makwach Bezin Yofa. The Chazar Rabbi Va'asik Rab Shimon Gamliel. Ultimately, I will say, and Rabbi came along and retracted his position on Rab Shimon Gamliel. So I'll say, so what do you see from here? Now remember again, I'll say, what is this referring to? In the case of Bitlo, in the case where you convened the Beis Din, right? In defiance of the Takana of Rab Shimon Gamliel. Originally, Rabbi said it works. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in that case said it doesn't work. Why? Imkain ma koach Beis Din yafa. So we'll say, so now watch this. So originally, Rabbi said that if a Beis Din went ahead and sold property, let's say for less than a sixth, they undersold it or they oversold it, it's no. So Rabbi originally held the Chachamim that the sale is void. Then what happened? Amar lefan of Rabbi Parta, Ben Osha Belazar Ben Parta, Ben Osha Belazar Ben Parta Gadol, Imkain Makwach Beis Din Yafa. If that's the case, that the sale is void, then what's the power of Beis Din? The Chazar Rabbi Va'asik Rab Shimon Gamliel. And I will say ultimately again, Rabbi went ahead and retracted his position and held like Rab Shimon Gamliel. Meaning what? That whatever Beis Din does stands. Now I will say, if that's the case, then what? Then it must be in the case also where you convene the Beis Din in defiance of the takana of Rab Shimon Gamliel, that your Beis Din, your act is void. So it must be then that the halacha follows Rab Shimon Gamliel in that first case, that if Ruvain sent a get with his shaliach and then convened the Beis Din, was mevatel the get, then what do we say? That voidance of the get itself is void. That act is void. Right? Because imkain makwach Beis Din yafa or midhat Rab Shimon Gamliel, and the fact that talach was Rab Shimon Gamliel in that case, hach, the second case Rabbi say of being mevatel zeh shelo bifnei zeh, ultimately again will be like Rabbi. So Rabbi say so halacha l'maisa, the Gemara is suggesting over here is that essentially we'll follow Rab Shimon Gamliel in the case of where you illegally convened a Beis Din to be mevatel the get in defiance of Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin's edict, that your act will be void. That is not a good bittul in Keimakach Beis Din Yafa. And I will say, since we know one case we follow Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that must be the case of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, which means we follow the case of Rabbi in the other case. What's the other case of Rabbi? What's the other case? Of where you appointed a group to do something, are you allowed to go ahead and be mevatel one member or some members of the group not in the presence of the rest of them? And the answer Rabbi says is yes, you can. You can be mevatel some, even though not in the presence of all. Va'af Rabbi Oshia u'demin Usha savar chadik Rabbi chad Rav Shimon Gamliel. In Rabbi Oshia Abusha also agreed one case follows Rabbi, one case follows Rav Shimon Gamliel. The Amar Rav Arachana Chamisha Sabi Abini Kamid Rabbi Oshia. There were 5 sages who were sitting before Rabbi Oshia. Demin Usha also Gabra Kameh. There was a who came before them. Va'ashkele Gita al Karchei. They forced him to give a get. Whatever the situation was, they were compelling him to give a get. Amrlan and he said to the people writing the get, Zil atmoru v'kasvula. Go and hide yourselves and write the get. Go and hide yourselves. I will say why tell them to hide themselves and write the get? Because Allah said this way the husband won't be able to find them to be mavatal the shlichus. But if you hold like Rebbe, kimitmiri mayhavi, even if they go ahead and what? Even if they hide, what good does it do? So the Gemara says, because remember again, according to Rabbi Abosai held that what? If you convene a Beis Din, right, independent of the shaliach, right, you could be mevatel the get. The fact that the instructions that they were getting was to go ahead and hide indicates to us what? Rabbi Shmuel Silber says, so again, Shabbos says, so therefore the conclusion that the Gemara is reaching is that halacha l'maisa, right now, we're going to stop over here for today, but ultimately, again, I will say one case, actually we'll finish up a little bit more, but one case is going to be like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and one case is going to be like Rebbe. And the way we're structuring it right now is, we'll paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in the case of bitlo, where you illegally convened a beis din to be mevatel a get. Reuven illegally convened a beis din, mevatel a get that he sent with a shaliach, right? He's in defiance of the edict of Rabbi Gamliel az-Zaken. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, that act of voiding the get does not work. It doesn't work. Well, passing like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in that case, and now we know, and therefore again, if we're passing like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in that case, we'll pass like Rebbe in the second case. What was the second case? That when you convene a group to do something, you can be mevatel, part of the group, even not in the presence of the entire group. Because Rabbi say, if you hold that in the other case of going in and being mevatel, part of a group, not in the presence of the whole group, they pass like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel that you can't do that. You don't even have to hide. Levajru abdure. All you need to do for them is to scatter. Because according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, you can't be mevatel, part of the group, not in the presence of the whole group. Rather, what do you see? Ella shmamina chadek Rebbe the chad Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. But rather, what do you see from here? We hold the Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in one case, and I will say we hold the Rebbe in another case. So I will say we're going to stop here for today. We have not yet seen the halacha l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa we'll do tomorrow. Mirza Hashem. I will say, but it appears we're kind of let's just go through everything now. I mean, not everything, but let's just trace this last piece through. So right. In the beginning, right? So I say in the beginning, if you sent a get Reuben sends a get with a shaliach, right? Remember, what are his options? His options are number one, right? Run after the shaliach. Option number two, send the shliach after the shliach. Option number three, run to Rachel. Option number four, send the shliach to Rachel. There is an option number five. What's the option number five? Convene a beis din and just be mevatel. How big the beis din? Machlokes. Convene a beis din mevatel. Rabbi Gamliel says, no, we're taking option number 5 off the table. You cannot convene an independent beis din. Why not? B'bnei tikkun ha'olam. What's the tikkun ha'olam? Either mamzeros, either aguna. Either way, you can't do it. Fine, I will say. Now, what's our shayla? You did it. Does it work? Rebbe says yes. Rabbi Shmuel Silber says no. So I will say, so therefore, again, the Gemara is suggesting over here that halacha l'maisa, it's that it seems to be that we pass like Rebbe in that case. That although it's illegal, if you did it, it works. Now the fact that we pass like Rebbe in that case, the Gemara says, means we pass like Rabbi Shimon in the other case. What's the other case? So I was saying, I'm sorry, just the opposite, excuse me, just the opposite, just the opposite. We pass like Rabbi Shimon in the first case. Namely, that if you go ahead and you convene the beis din to go to be mevatel the get, after Rabbi Gamliel has made his takana, ultimately, again, your act is meaningless. That act of constituting a beis din to be mevatel the get that you dispatch the shaliach, once Rabbi Shmuel says that you're not allowed to do that, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. And therefore, again, the get is given, whether it's the get that works or there's hafkaz, kiddushin, dissolution of the marriage, whatever it is, it doesn't work. So we'll say in case number 1, we paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. The fact they paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in case number 1 means they paskin like Rebbe in case number 2. What's case number 2? Rabbi saying the truth is case number 2 is actually cases 2 and 3. But essentially the common denominator is you are constituting a group to do something. Now what happens? You want to be mevatel, part of that group, not in the presence of the whole group. Does that work or not? Rebbe says it does. You can be mevatel, part of the group, even not in the presence of the whole group. And I will say, the Gemara seems to say, we pass like Rebbe in that case. We pass like Hashem in case number 1, pass like Rebbe in case number 2. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll see the actual halacha l'maisa in tomorrow's daf. Shkoyach. Plus, you remind that tomorrow morning, Rosh Chodesh, daf begins at 5:45, Shachris at 6:30. Shkoyach, I will say. I'll put it out in the chat also.